Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for attending the first session of Girl Up's Global Fitness Challenge. My name is Aracely, and I'm a Girl Up leader from the United States. And I am joined on the call by my fellow Girl Up leaders, Rene from Ghana, Rocío from Mexico, Aicha from Morocco, and Muskaan from Canada. Today, the five of us will be in conversation on mental health with Ian Collins, a licensed psychotherapist with over a decade of experience in the mental health field. Ian, thank you for joining us today. Could you tell us a little bit about how you became involved in the mental health space and your current practice?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting stuff. And I think it goes without saying it. I think it's extremely important that we're having conversations about mental health. I think we've all been through a pretty intense past 2 years on top of what we were already feeling, stress and things of that nature. So I think this is the right type of conversation to be having. A little bit about myself. So I got into the mental health field. Originally, I was an artist and a musician, and I wanted to go into like art therapy, music therapy, and then slowly whittled that down to just individual therapy. So lots of training, lots of school, long hours. I'm sure many of you guys understand what that's like. And then currently I am the clinical director of a practice in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we specifically focus on, substance use, a lot of mental health concerns. I individually do a lot of trauma work. So I work with people with PTSD, people who have been through human trafficking, things like that. So very exciting stuff. Yeah. I think you might be on mute.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Thank you so much. So I have a couple of questions for you. So how would you define mental health, and why is maintaining positive mental health important?
Absolutely. So the first question is a great one, because I think we talk about mental health a lot, but it's really hard to kind of pin down exactly what it is. I view mental health as our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. And it's vastly important to maintain good mental health, because mental health impacts everything from how well we do on an exam, our ability to kind of recall information, even down to our growth. People with poor mental health might experience delays in growth, even from like height to development. And there are multiple processes that are going on that are in reaction to mental health. Specifically, let's say with anxiety, anxiety can actually cause us to stop digesting food. Anxiety can, with prolonged exposure to anxiety-provoking situations, it can also kind of stunt our immune system. So it makes us a little bit more susceptible to illness. And so, mental health, keeping a good mental health allows us to engage with other people in fulfilling ways. It allows us to kind of wake up and feel excited about the day versus dreading the day. It really changes the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we act towards others. So I think, it's extremely important to keep healthy mental health in order to live a fulfilling life.
Well, thank you for sharing, Ian. I'll jump into the next question. How can we check in on our mental health? Are there questions that we can ask ourselves on a regular basis to assess our mental health?
That's a great question. So one of the first places I always encourage people to start with is, how am I sleeping? Is my sleep off? I don't know about you guys, but I notice when I'm kind of stressed out or anxious or, kind of depressed, my sleep really gets off, and I have trouble, having a good night's sleep. So that's usually the first place I ask people, how's your sleep? Sleep can also be a good barometer for diagnoses like bipolar disorder. When somebody isn't sleeping, that's a good indication that they might be going into an episode. So sleep is imperative. And of course, we are all impacted by different reasons that our sleep can be not so great. For anybody who has children or little siblings or anything of that nature, your sleep will definitely be impacted. But it's a good place to start. How is my sleep? The next question to ask is, how socially engaged am I? Right? Am I engaging with my friends and my family, or am I a little bit more isolated? feeling socially isolated can really be an indication of there might be something going on below the surface. So, when we are isolated, when we're not engaged with other people, so we like to ruminate, we like to kind of like go through our minds and kind of answer questions within ourselves instead of having those questions answered by others. And a lot of times, our mind can go to pretty dark places. And so it's kind of really important for us to be socially engaged and be able to kind of, challenge some of these negative thoughts we might be experiencing. Also, how are my eating habits? So we like to think about our activities of daily living. How am I eating? How am I sleeping? How am I taking care of myself? Meaning like, am I showering? Am I brushing my teeth? Am I kind of putting on clothes? Those kind of things. And those are also an indication that somebody might be going through something where their mental health is impacted. And then also, energy, right? How much energy do I have? We don't realize that, things like depression or anxiety can really zap our energy because, using anxiety as an example again, anxiety actually takes a lot of our resources away. So it causes us to kind of burn through calories really quickly. It causes us to use even our reserve energy that's stored in our fat cells. It gets kind of, depleted really quickly. So how's our energy? Also, have I lost interest in doing things that I used to enjoy, right? If I used to, really enjoy doing something and I'm not doing that anymore, is it because I've kind of found something else, or is it because maybe my mental health is kind of going down a little bit? Noticing our thoughts. So a fun way to think about it is, do I have ants, automatic negative thoughts, right? So are my thoughts going to kind of quick, dark places really quickly, again, without being challenged anywhere else? And a fun question to ask ourselves is, am I hungry, anxious, lonely, or tired? HALT. So, if I'm experiencing any of these things, it might be a good indication that, my mental health is, maybe needing a little bit more attention.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was so insightful, especially for youth like myself today. On to the next question. I wanted to ask, as I'm sure you know from your experience working with the youth, many young people often face imposter syndrome, where we constantly doubt our abilities and talents despite putting our best foot forward. What advice would you give to youth dealing with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, man, imposter syndrome is a great topic, and I think. Maybe it's helpful to know that, we experience it within our youth, but also I have several, patients that I work with who are, later in their life and they're still experiencing imposter syndrome. So it really is across the board. Imposter syndrome is interesting because I think it can be very beneficial and also pretty detrimental at the same time. So beneficial in the way of, if I feel a bit of imposter syndrome, I ask myself, okay, where are the places I can learn more, right? Where are the places I can do more research? Where are the places I can kind of increase my knowledge base? But at the same time, it can really make us feel as though we are less than. And so some of the strategies to deal with imposter syndrome, one of the most important ones is talking about it, right? So if you have somebody that you trust and you feel connected to, talk about the things that you're kind of worried about. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm very good at this, right? And if somebody else can share that, I was feeling the same way, then that gets to normalize the experience, and we get to really feel more comfortable with it. Actually, one of the most beneficial experiences I've had in my training and in my careers, I was doing a training with a pretty well-known psychotherapist, and the moment he said, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing, I was like, I'm not the only one, really. Other people don't know what they're doing, and it really kind of normalizes and kind of relaxes the stress we feel about it. When we realize we're not alone, that can really be helpful, right? When we realize we're not the only people struggling with something, that can be extremely helpful. Other things that are helpful. So sometimes we're incorrectly told, fake it till you make it. And that can be beneficial in some ways, but at the same time, if I'm faking it, then I'm not asking important questions that could really, build on my knowledge base. Again, it takes a ton of courage to ask a question. It takes a ton of courage to say, I actually don't know the answer to this. And when we can kind of build ourselves up to ask that question and say, okay, so, I feel confident in these areas, but this area, I need a little bit more support. Not only does that help us learn, but it also models the kind of experience that we can be, strong, courageous individuals in the face of, discomfort. And so kind of asking questions, especially in front of peers, can be extremely helpful, not only to ourselves, but to others. And then, kind of identifying what is the thing that I'm worried about, right? What's my worry? Is it that I don't feel competent in this one area? And then, once we identify what that worry is, we can look at what are the places that I do feel very confident, and what are the strategies that I've used to kind of build my confidence in these areas that I can generalize to this one specific thing. And additionally, I think, people who experience imposter syndrome often are very intelligent, very creative, very kind of driven. And so it's usually a good sign that somebody's experiencing imposter syndrome, because it's a reflection on their drive. And so it's also really important to say, what are the things that got me here, right? What are the things that I can be proud of within myself that got me to this point? Because often when we're experiencing imposter syndrome, we forget that. We think, oh, the only place that I can focus is what I'm not doing correctly, right? And when we can bring in, okay, what are the places that I did really well at, and how did it get me here, right? And then little things like, giving ourselves praise for the job well done, giving ourselves praise for the kind of accomplishments we've made. And I actually encourage it to go a little bit further and say, reward yourself in some way, right? And a reward doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be grand. It can be something specific to you. For me, at the end of the week, my reward is I will go get a cup of coffee with my son. My son doesn't drink coffee because he's only 4, but we'll go do something together where we, take time to do it. And it's a little reward for me saying, okay, I made it through a hard week. So finding a way to reward yourself for the hard work is extremely important. And as young people, I'm wondering, what kind of challenges you all have faced, either at school and your activism, that have impacted your mental health. Rene, I'm wondering if you could get us started, and then Muskaan, whenever you're ready, jump in.
I think for me right now, I have exams coming up, and I think a lot of people can relate right now. And so just being faced with the pressure of doing well. And I think I come from a low income household as well. So I feel an extra pressure as well to do well, to make my parents proud, to make the people around me proud, and just ultimately making myself proud. And just being faced with that, and in like that intersecting with my activism, prioritizing self-care, because I feel like that does also affect my performance, and just dealing with all of that right now is heavily impacting my mental health. So I think I can popcorn it over to Rocío.
Yeah, I'm actually, sorry, if it's okay, I'm curious, like Muskaan, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me personally, I was in my last year of high school, and it was during the pandemic and everything. And I was transitioning to university, and I live in Canada. So it's very tight restrictions during that time. And it was very stressful because we didn't know if we were going to be in person or we were going to be online. In the beginning of the year, it was in person, but then once December hit, Ontario universities, they kind of shut down because of, our cases kept getting higher. So we all kind of went in online, and I moved back to British Columbia. And I think during that time, I was going through so many emotions because I didn't know if I was supposed to go back, like, how am I going to do this? And just plus, like Rene mentioned, pressure from my family, for myself as well, having to do well in school. So I think going through all these emotions, it really played a negative toll on my mental health. And I think it was a very difficult process for me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can totally relate to what both Rene and Muskaan have said. I myself have also been pressuring sort of like myself during this whole college process. And it's been very hard because my family has always been very like supporting, and they have always told me that I should do what makes me happy. But that only makes me want to make them, like even prouder of my achievements and everything. So I feel like I have to work even harder to do what makes me happy and also make my family happy. And that has like put me into a very like difficult position this past few months. But yeah, definitely call it like the whole college application process is very stressing. And also like having to balance it with, you know, like activism and always trying to, you know, to keep fighting for, you know, like what I love and also the things that I stand up for. That's been very difficult, definitely. So, you know, I would also like to ask Ian, in your opinion, what can teens do to prioritize and protect their mental health? You know, if you could describe some immediate steps for us to take and then a few long-term ones as well, it would be really nice.
Absolutely. You know, the theme that I just heard was a lot of like pressure, right? We feel a lot of pressure to do well, right? And it's more than just getting a certain grade. It's kind of getting to this next step in life, and a lot is kind of riding on how well we do on exams, how well we do on applications, how well we do in our own lives. And one way to think about it is, if you took a bottle of soda, right, or pop, and you shook it up, right? It just builds with pressure and builds with pressure. And then eventually it's too much and it explodes, right? We want to avoid the explosion. So the way we kind of let pressure out is a little bit at a time. And we talk about self-care a ton, but think about self-care as letting some of the pressure out of the bottle. We want to kind of like get rid of all of this that we're feeling. One of the best ways to do that, and it's like this secret of the industry that I wish more therapists would talk about, is when our bodies are calm, we're able to kind of like control our mental health and our anxiety really, really well. And so one thing I constantly tell people do is constantly scan your body from head to toe and notice, am I squeezing any muscles anywhere, right? Whenever I'm anxious or I'm stressed, I kind of tense up my shoulders. And that's an indication that, oh, okay, I'm feeling a little bit stressed, right? And if we all do it right now, what'll be interesting is I bet people will find I'm holding tension in some muscle. And then when we can release that muscle, we feel a little bit more relaxed. There's also a process going on in the body that we don't realize, is that when muscles are tensed, it's sending signals to our brain that something's wrong. And that kind of puts us into our more like instinctual kind of fight, flight, or freeze brain. And so, you know, fight, flight, or freeze doesn't really help us if we're taking an exam, right? It actually kind of gets in the way. So we want to kind of keep a calm body as much as possible. It's also thinking about, I don't know if anybody has a cat, but when we're kind of stressed out and anxious, you know, imagine if you bring home a bag and you put it in the middle of the room and your cat comes in the room and is like, what is this thing that's in here? And they're a little on edge, right? And then one little thing and they pop off and they run away, right? That's kind of what's going on in inside our bodies if we are stressed out, right? That doesn't work well if we're taking an exam, right? That doesn't really help us if we're writing an essay. So one of the things we want to do is constantly kind of check in with ourselves and say, okay, am I tensing up? And is my breathing changing? Am I not breathing? Right. And so really checking on what's going on with the body. And so, you know, probably sound like a broken record now, but scanning your body, relaxing your muscles. That's something that foundationally I teach every single person I work with. Other things, again, sleep. Sleep is incredibly important for managing our stress, managing our mental health. You know, and something that's really beneficial is having, you know, a similar time that we're going to bed and having a similar time that we're waking up. If we kind of think about containing our days, right? I know what time I'm going to go to bed and I know what time I'm going to wake up. And that actually helps, you know, manage a lot of anxiety. Anxiety comes up when we feel like we don't know what's going to be next, right? Anxiety usually comes up when we're like, I don't know what's going to happen whenever I jump on this call. I felt some anxiety before, you know, we started this video call, because I was like, what if I get asked a question that I don't know the answer to, right? That's a pretty uncomfortable thing to feel. And I'm a therapist, right? So I talk about anxiety all the time. So it's a really normal thing. But if we can kind of control when we're going to sleep and when we're waking up, that's one place that we have structure. Other ways to really kind of manage our mental health and keep it in a good place is engaging in activities that give us a sense of either enjoyment or mastery. It's extremely important to be doing things that make us feel better. And it sounds simplistic and it sounds, you know, simple, but it's extremely important. So, you know, when you're, you know, focusing on school, when you're focusing on activism, I also want to encourage people to focus on things that are fun, right? What are the things that are fun? What are the things that not that school can't be fun or activism can't be fun, but it's quite draining, right? It takes a lot of our you know, a lot of energy out of our souls. So what are the things that we can do to build ourselves back up? And a lot of that's engaging in activities that give us, a sense of enjoyment or mastery. So hobbies, interests, and truly just fun. Community. Finding community is extremely important. And I think it's fantastic that I see, you guys are already engaged in a community with Girl Up, and finding communities, offline as well. It is extremely important for us to feel connected to others. A little fact that I get so interested in is the part of our brain that lights up when we feel physical pain also lights up when we feel rejected or abandoned. So, when we are feeling, outside of a group, that's painful, that hurts. And so we want to kind of make sure that we're connected with others and really kind of have at least one person in our lives that we feel seen by, we feel supported by. That's extremely important for mental health. Engaging in physical activity as much as possible, even if it's just going for a walk. Going for a walk and daydreaming is actually really, really good for the brain. It helps stimulate, blood flow to the brain. And so being outside wherever you can, being active in some way, if it's not exercise, something that's engaging, because that's a great way to expend energy and it helps us sleep better. And then, engaging in real life is fantastic. We also get pulled into engaging in social media. And I want to encourage people to kind of try to take a step back from social media where possible. Social media can kind of be like fast food, meaning it can kind of fulfill a need briefly, but long-term, we don't really get the nutrition we truly need, right? And that's okay, every once in a while. But there's also a lot of toxicity that exists in social media these days. And I think that can carry into our personal lives. In my own life, I have a rule like no social media when I'm laying in bed, right? No social media, because it can really, kind of impact how I feel in my safe space, which is my bed where I sleep, right? So really trying to disconnect from social media, where possible. And that's also part of setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is extremely important in the way of like, what am I comfortable with and where's my boundary? It's always important to remember that if we don't set our boundaries, other people will. So it's really important for us to know, like, what am I comfortable with and how do I express that, like, I don't want to do that. Knowing that it's always okay to change your mind. It's always okay to say no. And it's always okay to kind of advocate for yourself when you need to. And one of the best ways to do that is by using like an I statement, right? So instead of saying, you are making me feel uncomfortable, saying, I don't feel comfortable with this, right? And that's a very different way of saying the same thing. But when we use an I statement, it's really empowering to, our ability to really stand up. When I say stand up for ourselves and what we need. I'm wondering, like, what do you all do for managing your mental health? I know I listed a bunch of things, but are there things that you can think of in your own lives that you utilize to hold your mental health to a good place? Rocío, do you mind, kind of starting?
Yeah, of course. Well, I personally didn't think that social media heavily affected my mental health as much as people say it does until recently. I had this sort of like emotional slump and I decided to quit my phone for a few days. I got off bed, I reconnected with my surroundings. I just sat in my garden and just maybe daydreaming, staring at the sky and everything. And like, as silly as it may sound sometimes, like just sitting and not thinking at all, it definitely helped me a lot to regain mental stability and to change my perspective into a more positive one. Because it also helped me to, kind of like have the courage and, regain that passion I had for, in my personal experience is reading and writing about fashion. And that's what I love the most. But I used to feel like maybe I'm not good enough for this. Maybe I'm just like wasting my time. But like just taking a step back from all the things that that I didn't think affected me. It really did help me a lot to become a more positive person and actually sort of like start seeing life with different eyes. And I'm very interested in what Aracely has to say about this. So if Aracely, if you'd like to share your own experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually a first year college student going through finals week right now. So I feel like in colleges everywhere, there's that like idea that we have to be productive all the time, that we need to study all the time in order to get good grades. And especially with social media, there's like that it girl persona where they're doing like 5 hours studying a day, like the study with me's or like my productive day in my life. And I feel like just trying to model after those is very unrealistic because we all have our own challenges, we all have our own goals, paths in lives, and all of our bodies are different and can't necessarily like just sit down and study all that time, pull all-nighters, because that will lead to burnout. And burnout is very real. I'm especially experiencing burnout with college, and many of my friends are too with the STEM majors that we're in. And I feel like just seeing those things, seeing that persona, using that as a motivator, but not as a model to go after by. And especially just listening to your body, knowing when your body has limits, when to stop studying. Like I know pulling all-nighters is not effective for my studying, especially the night before a test, because then you get to the test and it's like you just blank out because you're lacking that sleep, you're lacking the energy needed in order to do well on the test. So for me, I've learned my body. I've learned that I'm most productive in the mornings during the day, and that at night, like information doesn't retain as well. So just knowing your body's limits, knowing when you're most productive, and just understanding your own challenges, your own goals, and just focusing on yourself. And kind of also, I kind of do a thing that you mentioned, that every Saturday morning, it's like my time for myself. I go to my favorite coffee shop, pick up a cup of coffee. I don't go on my phone. Maybe I'll like have some music playing or a podcast playing, but that's just time that I cut out for myself and I look forward to every week, just because as a little bit of a reward, and just to be like, okay, let's reflect on the week. Let's see what we've accomplished, what we're still struggling on, and just really prioritizing time to yourself, especially during time in college where you're surrounded by people 24/7, I think is very important. And I'm going to popcorn it over to Aicha.
Thank you, Aracely and Rocío, for sharing your ideas and your experiences with how to deal with mental health. And I totally agree with you, especially on the point of social media, because I'm also experiencing such a huge pressure from social media all the time. It drains your energy once you start like scrolling through the reels of Instagram, or you're never gonna go out of there. Like it's like it's like an adrenaline in you that keeps that keeps rushing, and you keep if you don't like wake up yourself, you're staying there for I don't know for as long as as long as it's going. So so I'm also I'm also one of the victims of social media, because it gives me really stress and anxiety. Sometimes I feel like my brain is gonna blow up at a certain point, so I take my phone, I put it somewhere I don't want to see it, and I tell my mom, please take it. I don't hide it or something, as I don't want to see it, because that it becomes like an addiction, honestly. And at some point you have to wake up and say, okay, I need to stop doing this. I need to fight this addiction. This is not going to get me anywhere. Maybe you can just open it for like a certain time during the day, maybe 10 minutes, just try not to go to reels, because that's gonna be crazy. Just open it for for maybe some quotes, maybe something that actually will push you or give you motivation, and just put it down and go back to what you were doing. So actually, one of the things that I learned doing to cope with my stress, anxiety, is cooking. Every time I feel stressed or something, I just go to the kitchen and start doing something. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, but that actually gives me such a relief. And I forget about social media, I forget about my phone, I forget about the whole world, everything that is surrounding me. I'm just focusing on that thing, what I'm cooking, making sure that it's gonna be delicious, not ruin it or anything. So yeah, I think
Right.
Cooking is one of the ways. And then I have sometimes I go out, but honestly, recently I haven't gone out for for some time, because I have work, and all I do is within, inside my home, like cooking, reading books, but although, I have an issue is that I don't have a lot of friends in real life, to be honest with you. So I have, most of my friends are on social media, and sometimes I feel so pressured, and I have a lot of things to share, and in real life there's no one to share with. So I find myself just talking to my friends on social media and trying to share what I'm feeling. So I think that's actually one of the ways as well to cope with mental health issues. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think these are great ways that you guys are already kind of talking about, maintaining your own stress. And something to think about is, so stress kind of hits us like a U. So there's a certain point where it's really helpful, right? I feel very motivating. I was an athlete, and so stress kind of like, okay, I gotta work harder to kind of like score this goal or do something like that. But once we kind of hit a certain point, anything after is kind of diminishing returns. It's actually not helpful. So really knowing your limits. What is my kind of like my indication that I'm a little too stressed? And something that was brought up of kind of like, when am I the most effective? So asking yourself, when is my T, my time, energy, and attention? When do I have the most of these three? So I'm a morning person. I like waking up early. I like being effective in that way. And so in the evenings, I'm much more kind of relaxed and kind of disconnected. And so understanding when do I work best can be extremely helpful. And I love the ideas of, cooking, disconnecting, but then also at the same time, social media can be really great for connecting. I mean, I think, I too have friends across the world and across the country, and some of the only ways we're able to connect is via social media. It's our intentional use that I think is really important. Saying, I'm going to set aside some time to connect, but I'm not going to do it all the time, right? I'm not going to get sucked into the algorithm, because it's really easy to do that. And so, really, like with anything, we want to see that there are kind of positives and negatives to it. And I appreciate, Aicha bringing up that, like, it's not all bad. Right? It's not all bad. There are some really wonderful benefits to it. It's kind of asking ourselves, how do we feel afterwards, right? Do I feel like this was a good use of my time? Do I feel like more socially connected, more, like a better version of myself? Or am I feeling depleted and actually pretty negative about myself? And that's a good indication of, if we need to put some structure into things.
Thank you, Ian. Just segueing on to the next question, I wanted to ask how we could be advocates for our mental health and how we could normalize conversations like these in our communities about mental health, and ultimately just how important it is to each and every one of us. Absolutely.
Well, it probably doesn't come as a surprise that I believe talking is an important thing to do. I mean, I'm a therapist, but I think it's really important for us to kind of talk this stuff out, to normalize that we all experience these things. Very similar to me sharing, I was kind of anxious about being asked questions that I didn't know how to respond to, right? And that all of a sudden, if somebody else is experiencing anxiety on this video call right now, I was like, I'm not the only one, right? And so talking about things in a very kind of normal way, right? So we all experience anxiety, we all experience stress, we all experience bouts of sadness. We all have very varied lives, and mental health is not something that only affects a few people. My hope is that one day we can talk about mental health the same way we talk about our physical health, right? That me talking about being anxious is the same as me being like, yeah, I had a cold. Like very similar to our physical health, or like my back is hurting, right? If I talk about my back hurting, people don't think there's anything wrong with me. But unfortunately today, if I talk about like, I'm feeling a little depressed, people are like, there's something wrong with you. And that's the thing we need to kind of change. And I think the part of the way we change that is the way we describe others who experience mental health challenges. So, I think a lot of times, either in the media or just in everyday conversation, people are talked about like their diagnosis. For example, saying, oh, they're bipolar, or they're schizophrenic, or, talking about it in that way. And, like that's kind of inhumane in a lot of ways, just like I wouldn't say they're cancer. Right. That's, we would say there's somebody diagnosed with cancer. Right. And those little kind of changes can be really beneficial. And it also kind of puts the onus on us as people to kind of talk about our own experiences of like, sorry, I was being crazy. We don't want to, use language like that. Or, I'm so OCD about keeping my space clean. OCD is a really challenging experience if somebody's actually diagnosed with that. And it's much more than just keeping my space clean. So, really kind of utilizing our ability to say, what's truly going on and what am I using to kind of, get through a conversation in a comfortable way. And another thing that's actually really important is showing other people and ourselves compassion when it comes to mental health. One of the most harmful things, in my opinion, that we can do is say, just get over it. And to kind of highlight this, if everyone's okay with this, I want to encourage you to try something really quick. I want you to imagine that in your hand, you have a lemon, right? You have a lemon, you've cut it in half and you have this lemon, and imagine taking the lemon and taking a big bite out of the lemon. You're just chomping into the lemon, right? I bet you're noticing your salivary glands are kicking in. Your mouth is kind of twinging up like you just bit into a lemon, right? Now, if you told yourself to stop it or somebody else told you to stop doing that, you wouldn't be able to, right? It's a reaction that's happening and we don't really have control over that happening. And unfortunately, we approach others who are going through mental health concerns in the same way. Just stop it, right? Just stop being so depressed, stop being so upset. And that's, it's actually pretty harmful. It's not very helpful at all. So what we want to kind of ask is, what's going on, right? Instead of saying, what's wrong with you? We say, what's going on for you, right? Is there anything I can do to help? That's the kind of direction and type of engagement I want to encourage us to take, especially with mental health.
Wow. The importance of language and the way we communicate our emotions is a topic that I'm very interested in. So, I would like to ask you if, what are some resources that young people can use to continue learning about this issue?
It was brought up before about, social media, right? And I don't want to hound on social media, but unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation, especially in places like TikTok, where, statements are being made or kind of overgeneralizations about certain diagnoses or, oh, here's a way to fix this problem. I want to, encourage people to avoid that, because what happens, someone like myself, I was in training and schooling for, 10 years, right? So a lot of like specific knowledge and research that I've had in my career. If I were to, be kind of an influencer these days without that type of information, I could say, this is the way to do it. And unfortunately, if that doesn't work for somebody, they can say, well, there must be something really wrong with me. And we want to avoid that. We, kind of use stuff like TikTok for enjoyment. Don't use it for, kind of like fixing yourself, so to speak. And then, there are also, similar to TikTok, there's a lot of misinformation that's being shared by people who aren't licensed or don't have like a lot of training, and what might be true for one person might not be true for another person. And so really saying, okay, let me kind of, I can listen to this, but let me kind of do my own research, right? Let me do my own research from, reputable sources. So understanding like .org or .gov can be really important things. It's different for everyone's access to certain things around the world, but things like the World Health Organization has really good stuff on their website for like, this is mental health, or in the US we have NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and there's really good resources there, or just basic kind of Google searches of this is a topic that I'm interested in, right? But we always want to kind of like explore, is there an agenda behind what this person is saying? Are they trying to sell me something? Are they trying to kind of like mislead me on something? Or is this actual like good factual information that's backed by research? So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's I think really helpful to look at, especially access to different sites online. Your family doctors, your general practitioners will have, usually have good information on like, here's a place to go or someone to talk to. I encourage everybody to talk to a therapist. I'm a little biased as I'm a therapist, but, therapists see therapists, right? We all kind of like need support. And so finding ways to kind of, find the path that's best for you to kind of manage your mental health and learn more in the form that's going to work for you. For me, it's kind of random Google searches on a crazy idea. I just did the thing I said we shouldn't do, right? I said crazy. It's really hard to kind of challenge that, but I'll get an idea and I want to go Google it, right? But then it's an arduous process of saying what's reputable and what's not. Hopefully that was an okay answer.
Thank you, Aiden. Okay, sorry, you want to, sorry, Rene.
Sorry, Aicha. I just saw a question in the comment section for Ian, and I just wanted to bring that out. Arifa, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, from Bangladesh had a question, which was, how can I redirect a negative thought into a positive one?
It's a great one. So I have the belief that I can turn off the lights in my office. I can turn off this webinar, but I can't do that to my thoughts and my feelings, right? They aren't right, wrong, good or bad, true or false. They are thoughts and they are feelings. They come up. But sometimes they come up and we give them a lot of attention. So, one of the things we want to do, if it's like a negative thought, we want to say, how do I know this is true, right? Where is this negative thought coming from? If it's a thing I'm worried about, I'm going to say, what's the worst case scenario? And also, what's the best case scenario, right? We want to be able to kind of challenge our thoughts by adding, a contrast. So what's the worst case scenario? Could I handle it? What's the best case scenario? Could I handle it? And then what's the most likely thing to happen? What's in the middle? We want to, kind of have cognitive flexibility in the way to say, okay, there are multiple possibilities that can come from this one place. And really understand what is our kind of automatic negative thoughts. Where do they go to, right? Especially if it's imposter syndrome, right? My automatic negative thoughts say I'm not good enough, or this thing that I did is, I feel really uncomfortable with it. Really understanding what are the themes surrounding my automatic negative thoughts, and how true is this? Where's my evidence? And once we start viewing our thoughts as thoughts, we can kind of look at them very objectively. An example that I actually like to give is about a year ago. I was trying out this kind of I guess it was a diet. So I was trying out this diet where I wasn't eating any added sugar, right? And that was an adjustment to me for my body. So one day I was in my office and I was like, oh, I know there's some chocolate covered cashews in the cabinet. I could go eat one, right? I don't have to tell anybody. I could just go eat this cashew. And by thinking about my thought, this desire I had to go eat this piece of candy, by thinking about it as, oh, my body's craving sugar. I'm having a craving. This is a thought. It allowed me to kind of pull it out of my head, so to speak, and objectively say, do I need to listen to this thought, right? What's at the core? What's behind it? Oh, it's because my body's craving sugar and it's remembering where there's sugar, right? So understanding what's behind our thoughts can be really helpful for us then to say, how do I challenge it? That was a very long-winded answer. Hopefully it worked.
Thank you, Ian. So before we wrap up this, so are there any last pieces of advice you would like to share with the audience?
Absolutely. Very similar to what I mentioned before about keeping a calm body. I really want to encourage everyone to kind of go through life with a calm body and a curious mind. A lot of times, using anxiety as an example, when we are anxious, we start to kind of predict the future and read people's minds. We kind of think that we have this magical power where I know exactly what they think. I know exactly what they're going to say. And I know exactly what's going to happen whenever I walk into this situation, right? Those of you who are at university right now, right? I know that if I walk into this class late, everyone's going to look at me and they're going to judge me, right? Oh, so that brought in a lot of anxiety. I remember when I was an undergrad of what if I walk into this class late? But I actually don't know if that's going to happen. So being curious is extremely important for saying, okay, what's truly going to, what's going to be the outcome? Another way to think about it is if I told you this book was the most exciting thriller you will ever read in your entire life, and I handed it to you, and then I told you how it ended, you probably wouldn't want to read it, right? Because you already know what's going to happen. Our anxiety kind of does the same thing. It causes us to think we know how something's going to end, but truly we don't. And that can make life feel quite dull. Curiosity means that we get to explore other possibilities. So keeping a calm body and a curious mind is extremely important, in my opinion, to kind of move through life. If I'm curious about the experience of another person, it's going to make me treat them in a very different way than if I'm certain about the experience of another person, right? I want to be very curious. I want to encourage everybody to be very curious. A lot of times mental health and kind of anxiety really stops our curiosity. It stops our ability to kind of want to explore more. And so if I'm calm, then my brain's going to be actually able to be more curious, right? When I'm calm, my brain is using the prefrontal cortex versus the limbic system. And we want to kind of use this part of our brain, not the back part. So, I mean, really keeping good kind of, self-care routines, how's my mental health? How am I taking care of myself? How am I making space for myself? Are there things that I'm doing intentionally for myself, like carving out time for a cup of coffee on a Saturday, or carving out time to cook whenever I'm feeling stressed, or intentionally carving out time to use social media to connect to other people? That adds structure. And then, constantly, again, broken record, scanning your body. Am I tensing up, or am I, kind of overwhelmed with anxiety? Let me relax my body and be curious about the experience. So, curiosity and a calm body, I think, will really help people move through life.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a question in the chat actually about how our audience can get in touch with you, whether you can drop an email in the chat, or if there's any other way that they can get in touch.
Sure. I can put my email in the chat, or if there's a way to kind of send it out to the attendees through Girl Up, whatever would be most beneficial, I can throw that out there.
Yeah, if you can drop in the chat, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep. I will do that now.
Okay, amazing. Well, I think this was a great way to start the Global Fitness Challenge. Thank you, Ian, for taking your time today and for all your responses. I learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience did as well. Girl Up leaders and supporters, thank you for today attending today's session. We hope to see you at our next Global Fitness Challenge event, a physical training session on next Tuesday, May 10th. You can register using the link we have dropped in the chat. Thank you again, and take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.